Today's video is sponsored by NordVPN. A VPN encrypts the connection between your computer and the internet, which protects your data from hackers and from governments who are seeking to take your private information. As someone who makes a living online, I understand the importance of keeping my information private, which is why I use NordVPN. Another benefit of a VPN is that it allows you to act as if you're in another country, which in some cases allows you to access certain kinds of content that wouldn't be available to you otherwise, like Netflix content specifically for the United States, or even basketball games that are blocked due to network and location restrictions. Thanks to this VPN, I can always show my support for my team. NordVPN isn't just affordable, but it's also incredibly fast, unlike many of its competitors, which allows your streams to sustain a high level of quality as you enjoy your content. Go to nordvpn.com/JohnnyArnett to get 70% off a 2-year plan plus 1 additional month free, only $356 per month. It's risk-free with Nord's 30-day money-back guarantee. Again, that's nordvpn.com/JohnnyArnett and take advantage of this great deal while you still can. The NBA has a deep and rich history that includes many exciting events, but as much time as I spend talking and thinking about these classic moments of basketball history, I probably spend an equal amount of time thinking about the moments and situations that I wish could have turned out differently. In this video, I'm sharing the top 4 things in NBA history that I personally would change if it was in my control. For the sake of keeping this a fun and contemplative video, I will not be including any situations that involve a tragedy, since those would make the easiest and obvious choices. So without further ado, let's get into it. Number 4. A Kobe vs. LeBron finals matchup in 2009. This appeared to be on a collision course throughout the majority of the year, as the Cavaliers and the Lakers each had the best record in their respective conferences. Once Kevin Garnett went down with a knee injury that would force him to miss the playoffs, and with the defending champion Boston Celtics basically out of the picture, a Cavs and Lakers finals seemed as if it was a foregone conclusion. Not only was it the expectation, but the basketball community as a whole seemed to be actively rooting for it, as both players were all over the commercials, both players led their position in All-Star voting, and both players led the NBA's MVP race. One man represented the state of the NBA as it was, while the other was clearly the league's future. No example is greater than the NBA is not completely scripted than this one, because if it was, these two teams would have absolutely met in the NBA Finals. Unfortunately, the Orlando Magic were clicking at just the right time, and despite an iconic game-winning shot from LeBron James, they ultimately came up short against the Magic in the East Finals, losing to them in 6 games. At the time, I was actually happy that my Lakers only had to face the Magic and not the Cavaliers, because I felt less intimidated by Orlando, and I knew we could make quick work of them, which was exactly what we did, defeating them in only 5 games. But now, all these years later, considering how Kobe and LeBron never met in the finals, I strongly wish it would have been Cleveland after all, as it would have made for one of the most exciting championship series of NBA history. It truly is a sadly missed opportunity, considering how it was so close to happening for quite some time, as either Kobe or LeBron were in the NBA Finals every year from 2007 all the way to 2018. Number 3. Michael Jordan doesn't play for the Wizards in 2002 and 2003, but for another team instead. Michael Jordan's competitive drive and his connection to the Washington organization led him to suit up and play for the Washington Wizards for his final 2 seasons. If you followed this channel for very long, then you've heard me go on and on about how underappreciated Jordan's years were with the Washington Wizards, as he turned the Wizards into legit competitors in the Eastern Conference leading up to his meniscus tear, and Jordan was among the hottest players in the league at that point as well. If it wasn't for a freak accident where Jordan and Eton Thomas collided, then MJ could have taken his Wizards into the East playoffs, where they may have made some noise. The thing is, Jordan stepped down from his general manager position with the Wizards in order to play with the team for 2 seasons. Jordan had assumed that when he had finished his tenure as a Wizards player, he would resume his position as the Wizards general manager. The Wizards owner, Abe Pollin, had something else in mind and fired Jordan from the team soon after he finished playing. This hurt Jordan on a personal level, and he said that he felt betrayed by the owner. Jordan later stated that he wouldn't have ever played for the Wizards if he had knew the true status of his relationship with the Wizards owner. So let's hypothetically say that Jordan had knew this. His itch to return to play basketball was almost certainly going to be acted upon regardless. So if he isn't playing for the Wizards, who would he have played for? He's definitely not going back to the Chicago Bulls, as they were not only terrible at that point, but they were also still being managed by Jerry Krause, who famously wasn't near the top of Jordan's buddy list. There's two destinations that I think Jordan could have gone to instead. One is the Los Angeles Lakers, where he would have played under Phil Jackson once again, and where he would have taken a mentorship role for Kobe Bryant. The other option is for the Portland Trail Blazers, where he would have played alongside of his former longtime teammate Scottie Pippen. Both of these Western Conference teams were among the NBA's championship contenders. So what do you guys think I'm gonna say? Of course, I wish he would have played for the Los Angeles Lakers, as he would have taken the starting small forward position ahead of the Lakers' Rick Fox. I wish this would have happened instead of his time with the Wizards, as it would have made the most star-studded trio of NBA history, while giving Jordan another opportunity to compete for a couple more championships in the final seasons of his career. Not to mention how interesting it would have been to see Jordan and Kobe have to get along on the same roster. Number 2. I would wipe the Malice at the Palace out of NBA history. If this single event doesn't take place, or if that drink had just barely missed Ron Artest, it would have changed so many things throughout NBA history. The Indiana Pacers were arguably the championship favorites at the time the brawl took place. But with Ron Artest being suspended for the rest of the season, and with Jermaine O'Neal and Steven Jackson missing a significant amount of time as well, their season was basically ruined on the spot. The most devastating part of that was how that season was the last of Reggie Miller's career, which could have sent him out with his one and only NBA championship ring. As much as that sucks, Miller and the Pacers are just small-scale aspects of how the league was affected. The NBA as a whole became super paranoid about situations escalating into violence, and David Stern said that he would do everything in his power to make sure that the league would never have an evening like that ever again. It had an extremely softening effect on the league, as for one, referees became much quicker to call technical fouls, and became incredibly quick to punish any players for excessive trash talking. The Malice at the Palace also resulted in the NBA creating new rules to discourage any potential brawls. This might not sound like a negative thing, but we do have a direct example of how it negatively impacted the outcome of an NBA season. One of the new rules stated that during an altercation, all players not participating in the game must remain in the immediate vicinity of their bench. Violators will be suspended without pay for a minimum of one game and be fined up to $50,000. To the embarrassment of the league, this rule took effect for Game 5 of the 2007 Western Conference Semifinals between the San Antonio Spurs and the Phoenix Suns. Towards the end of Game 4, Robert Horry famously hip-checked Steve Nash into the scorer's table, which naturally resulted in the Phoenix players reacting. Suns star Amari Stoudemire and quality role player Boris Diaw both barely left the bench area before they were quickly rushed back by their coaching staff. As insignificant as this may have seemed, the NBA went through with their Malice at the Palace rule and suspended both Stoudemire and Diaw from Game 5, which was a crucial fifth game in Phoenix. The Suns went on to not only lose that game, but they lost home court advantage and eventually lost the series as a result. The Malice at the Palace not only significantly softened the NBA, but it possibly cost Steve Nash's Suns and Reggie Miller's Pacers an NBA championship. All of this is why I would definitely change that horrible night in Detroit. Number 1. The NBA doesn't veto the Chris Paul trade to the Lakers. Now obviously, there is probably some subconscious bias toward this situation, since I've always been a huge Lakers fan. But even outside of the Lakers, this block trade had a massive negative effect on the basketball world. If the trade is never blocked, Chris Paul may actually be an NBA champion. Kobe and LeBron would have likely had their long-desired matchups in the NBA Finals. Kobe likely never tears his Achilles, since he wouldn't have been playing those absurd amount of minutes just to get his team into the playoffs, and Kobe Bryant and Tim Duncan would have had more matchups in the West playoffs, and likely would have added much more history to their famous rivalry. The biggest part that bothers me about this block trade is how it affected the perceived integrity of the league. Dell Demps was the general manager of the Hornets at that time, and when he tried to trade Chris Paul to the Lakers, he was doing it out of the best interest of his team. But because the Hornets organization didn't have an official team owner, David Stern was able to flex his power and stop the trade for reasons that had nothing to do with the Hornets' best interest. You see, at this point in basketball history, the Miami Heat's Big Three had just assembled, and other small market teams were becoming fearful of a league being completely run by super teams. So when Chris Paul had appeared to join forces with Kobe, team owners like Mark Cuban and Dan Gilbert famously complained to David Stern, asking him to stop the trade. So that's exactly what David Stern proceeded to do. Listen, as an old school basketball fan, I don't really like super teams, and I'm all for the league office taking steps to assure that there's a competitive and fair balance. But if they're gonna do that, they should do that in the off-season, when no trades or free agency moves are taking place. Implement rules and procedures that encourage players to avoid making super teams. Everything the Hornets, Rockets, and Lakers did in this three-team trade was legal and was within the best intent of their organizations, and the league completely disrupted that just as the trade was being executed. Yes, I didn't like it when Kevin Durant joined the 73-9 Warriors during the prime of his career, but as much as I didn't respect that move from a competitive standpoint, I respected his freedom to make that decision for himself, because it was legal and honored the rules of the league. Even if the league had the power to do so, I wouldn't have wanted them to block that signing, since Kevin and the Warriors didn't break any rules, and it would have affected the course of basketball history as a result. That's exactly what happened with the Chris Paul trade, and I think the ways it affected the league overall were significantly more negative than positive, especially when you consider how it accomplished absolutely nothing in preventing the era of super teams. So what do you guys think? If you had the power to change a couple things in NBA history, what would they be? Let me know in the comments section below. Thanks for watching as always, make sure to like and subscribe for more basketball content, and I'll see you guys in the next video.